Welcome to the LeaderCast podcast, a weekly deep dive into the stories that transformed our guests into leaders worth following. I'm your host, Joe Boyd. If you've been enjoying the podcast, thank you so much for being a listener. One simple thing you can do to help us out is give a review wherever you listen. Today's guest is Luis Velasquez. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation I have with him. Luis is a self-proclaimed jerk whisperer, so maybe you might need him in your own life, maybe not. His story is amazing. It has a clear all is lost moment that redefined the rest of his life. Check it out. Luis Velasquez, welcome to the LeaderCast podcast. Super excited to have you today. Welcome to LeaderCast.
So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Really excited. I've read your bio and a little bit about you. It's our first time meeting, but I'm excited to get to know you a little bit. We're gonna kind of go back in time and hear a little of your story. But before we do that, can you just, for the folks who aren't aware of who you are, can you just let us know what you're into, what you do today?
So what am I? What do I do? Let's see. I live in Redwood City, California. I am an executive coach. I coach mostly people that are very highly valuable for organizations, but they are difficult to work with. So people call me for lack of better words, the jerk whisperer. Wow. So I work with individuals that are sometimes with companies a legal peril, and that's what I do. That's my niche. I am originally from Guatemala, Central America. I came to the States, like many immigrants hoping for a better life. Came to the States, got my education, went back for a few years, and came back again to finish my education, and then decided to stay. Been doing coaching for about 11 years now, but I didn't start as a coach. I was aspiring university professor.
Okay.
And then I was blessed with a brain tumor.
Okay.
And I had I got to reinvent myself, and this is my third act, literally, and I think that I found what I am meant to do.
Wow, so there's a lot there. We'll definitely want to talk about that whole journey. I've never met a jerk whisperer. I probably don't need one. I've been told I'm the opposite of one. I probably need to be a little more of a jerk sometimes. But that's an interesting sort of niche to fall into. I'm curious if are you yourself sort of a recovering jerk, or have you always kind of been a nice guy?
I think that I've been throughout my life, I've been misunderstood.
Yeah.
And people make assumptions of people based on how we show up.
Yeah. And
I don't think that 99% of people wake up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a jerk today.
Right.
I don't think so. And I think that the key with the majority of people that I have worked with are people that are misunderstood. That their intention is not to be toxic, or his intention is not to be mean. It's just they don't have the mindset, the skills, or the habits to change that. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's not that I was a jerk myself, but I think that I've been misunderstood many times.
Sure.
And I realized that many of my clients fall in that category, that they are misunderstood.
Yeah. Okay. Well, take us back. Could you, always super curious. I grew up in the United States, so curious from other folks' experiences as kids. What was it like where you grew up as a child? What kind of kid were you? What were you into?
I think that before I give you that, I'm going to give you some context of how and where I grew up.
Sure.
So I grew up in a small little town in Guatemala, Central America. If you remember, in the 1970s and 80s, the United States was a Cold War. The Cold War was never fought in the United States. The battles were fought in Central America and Latin America pretty much. So I grew up in an area that had a lot of political violence.
Yeah.
And we were extremely poor, really, really poor. I mean, sometimes the question wasn't, what are we going to have for breakfast today? But rather, are we going to have a breakfast today?
Yeah.
Having said that, I had a really, really happy childhood. I remember, just making stories and helping, my parents. And for me, that was normal. because I didn't know anything else. It wasn't until I left my country and I came to the States I realized that, oh my gosh, there is another way of doing things. But at that time, I was, my family, thank God, we were not touched by the violence, but we definitely had to struggle. But through it all, I mean, we were really happy. I was a happy kid.
Yeah. When did you have aspirations to come to the United States early on? How did that come about?
It wasn't an aspiration. I just, I think that when I graduated from junior high, and I went to get my diploma. One of the teachers that was the hardest teacher that I had in my middle school, he said, when he was handing me my diploma, this boy is gonna go really far. And that, I don't know what he's telling me. I don't know, why he said that, but I took that a heart. You see what I'm saying? And I realized that I needed to do something. I took it as a personal challenge and as a call to action, and I started looking for opportunities to go somewhere and make myself useful. Let's put it that way. I remember, when I finished high school and I started working, there was I was working in a farm, and from where I lived to the farm, I had to walk through the forest. And I will walk through the forest pretending that I knew English. I was like just gibbering, thinking I'm gonna go somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know how that's gonna look like, but I know that I will. I would, and here I am today.
One of the themes in it's obviously like probably the best thing for me in my whole career has been hosting this podcast, because I get to constantly talk to people smarter than me and with different experiences. So I noticed themes, and one of them is so many folks will say one person who said one sentence to them when they were a kid, and they will remember that the whole life. And many times they don't even keep in touch with that person. But and then by chance, did you stay in touch with that teacher that told you would be something someday?
I did not. I've been meaning to send him a letter.
Yeah,
and I think
nice.
that I'm gonna do that. Yeah. But I remember, this was it's very vivid. That I think that changed the trajectory of my life. Let's put it that way.
Do you think of that story as you lead other people? Are you more conscious to sort of call out things that you see in others as you're leading others?
I think I do. I think I do. If I could. Let's put it that way. If I could summarize my philosophy of coaching, it is the following sentence. To act differently, I need to think differently. And to think differently, I need to see differently. And sometimes we see things based on our experiences. Yeah. And just what I was telling you, my experience was was normal. Like where I live, that was normal to me. It wasn't until I see difference and I started to think differently, and act differently. And that's what I do with my clients, that I help them to see things differently. I reframe things so they can see things differently, so they can think differently and act differently.
I love that. I've devoted most of my life to storytelling and story and kind of the theory of story. And we all start off in a normal world. It may seem not normal to others, right? But to us, it feels normal. And then there's usually like what we call a call to adventure. So I want to get to kind of that part of your story. So what happened to sort of get you from walking through the forest pretending to speak English to actually getting here to the U.S.? What was that story?
So I think that, how can I express that? Yeah, this is very vulnerable for me. And so when I was in high school, my dad had a really bad accident. I mean, he, a really, really bad accident. And we are, 5 kids. And then it was so bad that he couldn't work for a while anymore. And we went to live with different relatives because my mother couldn't afford to keep us all together. And when my dad started to getting better, so my dad's dream was always for us to continue studying, to go to the university. And I think that inability of him to be able to do that with me was also another push for me to figure out, what am I going to do this? What am I going to do this? What am I going to do about it? And I remember, when I finished high school, my first intention was to get a job, because I knew that my dad was not going to provide for me to go to university. And then I found a job, but I told my dad that I was still in the school, and I think that in one way I was looking for a job somewhere, and I went to a foundation that is called the Scholarship for Peace at that time, and looking for a job. And they told me, no, we don't have a job. But by the way, we have this program that is looking for young people, kids, people that can go get a scholarship to the United States, and they can return and be beacons of change. Oh, wow. And that's how I got the great opportunity to apply, and I was elected. And the funny thing is that when they sent the letter of acceptance, they sent it to my hometown, And my dad was like so excited about it, and so he tried to call me at the place where he thought I was living, because and he couldn't find me, and I was at a farm working, And then, when I contacted him, he confronted me and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm working." And he said, like, he was very disappointed at me, but at the same time, by the way, there is a letter here that you got a scholarship. So that's the story.
Yeah, I picked a good day to find out, because we had some good news as well, right?
Yeah. But to your point, I think that in my case, if I look back at my journey, let's put it away, the pivotal moments of my career or my life has been marked by dark times or suffering or pain. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer that's where growth tends to happen. We can. It takes a lot of effort to really grow as a person when things are going great. But when the pain and failure are the two things that have shaped me the most, and definitely given me the most empathy for others. I'd love to hear then. You mentioned the brain tumor. I assume that was a massive dark episode as well. I'm assuming that it was like that. So maybe could you just kind of fill us in? You said you wanted to be a professor, and then that happened. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about that part of your story?
Yeah. So I did a PhD over at Michigan State University, and I got a position there as an assistant professor of fungal genetics. And I thought, oh my God, I'm done. This is all I have to do is, publish a few papers, and I get my tenure, and I'm set for life.
Yeah, you made it.
In the process, I got married, bought a house, even got a dog, and then I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Long story short, when I came back from the surgery and everything else, the doctor told me, you have to accept your new reality, and your new reality is that you probably won't have to be able to go back to work as a professor for I don't know when, and you probably won't be able to walk straight anymore. Lost my wife, my wife left, and then I was in a painful time, and I remember this. Another moment of my life is I was in at that time I was in it was one particular night that everything came crumbling down when I realized that the last bastion of support that I had was about to leave, which is my wife. Sure. And then I decided, oh my God, I decided to thinking about how am I going to end it all. That's the only time that I considered suicide.
Yeah.
And I was, bawling and crying on the floor. And then I remember an image came into my mind. It was the image of my mother. And my mother is a devout Catholic. And I thought, and I was thinking, I cannot do this to my mother, because if I do this, she's going to suffer tremendously. thinking that probably go to hell. You know what I'm saying? And we're not going to be happy in heaven together. Yeah. And it's going to be too painful for her. And I said, I cannot do this for her. Therefore, I need to get better. And that's how, my recovery started. And I decided, at that time, for me, getting better was to get my health back.
Yeah.
And so I started, walking faster, start running. And that was 100 marathons ago. So since then, I've run 100 marathons. I've done 100-mile races. I've done several ultra marathons and Ironman triathlons, and reinvented myself a few times. But again, the pain was what pushed me to shift my course of action, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sure does. And Luis, thank you for being so vulnerable with us and telling us that. We tend to stumble on stories around folks' mental health on this podcast as well. It's another sort of through line. And I've struggled with depression myself. And, I think I get more feedback on that than anything else. We do this podcast to help leaders. And one of the things, maybe it's no more worse than anybody else in the world, but definitely leaders have their own sort of demons to battle and their own really dark nights. And it sure does make all the difference to bring it out in the light. So thanks for telling that part of your story. And it definitely is like an all in the movies. We call that in a screenplay, the all is lost moment, where there's just nothing left. And then that propels you on to the next act. I think you even talked about acts. I'm always curious with folks when you because a lot of times, sometimes you only have that moment in retrospect. You can look back and realize, a couple years ago, that was a really dark time. But some folks, and you even said it was a blessing in your life, but some folks have a moment where it's clear. What did you do in reality the next day or week or two? Do you remember? Because I think there's probably folks listening right now that are kind of at that place that just want to wake up tomorrow and think a little different, do something a little different. Do you have any advice, or what did you do?
I think that the hardest part for me, and the hardest part for many people, is just getting started.
Yeah.
And I think that the way I see it is that, we'll have everything that we need to do that, to get started. And the idea that, when I get this, so when I prepare for this, so when I get that is in the future, and it doesn't allow me to get started. Yeah. So the key for me is, damn it, I'm going to do it, and just do it and start doing it. And once you start doing it, then, get momentum, and it doesn't require much, just get momentum and celebrate the small wins and just keep on going.
Did you have?
So it's not complicated, and again, I don't want to, I've been so blessed and privileged that my life has been hard, that it's easier for me to get started. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of times, people tell me, oh my God, you have gone through a lot, and I would have never been able to do what you did. And I think that when people say that to me, they're minimizing their pain and their own suffering. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And I think that one of the elements that has helped me is to realize that my struggles are my own. And I am going to conquer them. I cannot compare myself, because your struggle might be completely different than mine.
Yeah. When you turn that corner, we know you're going to become sort of an executive coach here. But as you start to think, obviously you could walk straight again because you ran marathons. So that part got figured out. When he said that, when the doctor said you probably wouldn't be able to teach or be a professor anymore, was that due to cognitive issues they thought would, and did that get resolved?
It was. Thank God, I'm recovered, I would say 99% of it. But at the time, I couldn't remember. It's funny thing. I knew how to type and read, but I forgot how to write. So I had to learn how to write, when I wanted to, to drive, I was excited about, I can drive. And then I attempted to do one, and I wanted to write, and I would turn the steering on the left.
Oh no.
So all of those, I mean, if you think about it, as a professor, you depend on your mind and your, memory. And my short-term memory was pretty, what is the word? Affected. Let's put it that way. I still have issues, but I think that the biggest, how can I say? I think that the tipping point for me is to realize that I had to stop comparing myself to the person that I was before and embrace the person that I am now, tumor included. And I think that when I realized, this is what I have, a lot of times, I was thinking in the past, I used to do that. I used to be a professor, and I put a lot of value of my work based on what I used to do, which is being a professor, And so when I was in the dark phase, I felt worthless because I couldn't be a professor anymore. And then I realized that what I needed to do is to reinvent myself. And now what I do is different from who I am. Yeah. And I want to make sure that those are two completely different things, because I can do something completely different, but who I am remains.
That's pretty good. That's almost tattoo worthy. I might have to consider that one. I want to get to pretty quickly, like just what you've learned about leadership, having coached so many leaders. But before then, let's talk a little bit about how you came to do what you do now. What my assumption would be, you don't come right out of that dark moment and think, I know what I want to do. I want to be an executive coach. So what was the journey to get you to that point to realize that might be your calling, for lack of a better word?
Well, so I am when my ex-wife and I, she was going to school to do human resources back then, and I was doing my PhD, and I used to talk to her about human resources and whatnot, And when I decided that I wanted to reinvent myself, I was, I think that I'm gonna do some human resources work, and not to minimize the challenges of a human resources person, but the reality is, and I'm gonna be totally honest with you, is that the first thing that when people are out of work, they label themselves, me included, as a consultant or a coach.
Sure.
So at that time, that was the lowest point of entry. That was the easiest point of entry. So I said, that's what I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be a consultant. Yeah. And I started looking for opportunities for consulting. And I think that going back to what you mentioned is mentors and people that can help you. It only takes one person. If I look at the pivotal moments of my life, sometimes it's pain, but sometimes it's one person that pushes you, yeah, or teaches you something, gives you an opportunity. And I was given this opportunity by a friend of mine who the first time I approached him, he said, what do you want to do as a consultant? You don't have the background, you don't have the experience, you don't have the education. What are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, but I can learn. I'm sure I can do it. And a few weeks, I don't know, a few weeks later, I don't know how long it was. And he said to me, well, I have good news and maybe not so bad news, not so very good news. The good news is that we'll give you a shot, to work with us. The bad news is that you have to go to Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And at that time, we were in the middle of the Gulf War, yeah, and the expats were leaving Saudi Arabia like but there was exodus. So there were not many people. So I went there, and I was sitting as a consultant. I was sitting in my office when the VP of HR came into my office and said, Luis, I am going to give a presentation tomorrow. Can you help me? And I said, sure, I'll help you.
I'll consult you.
A couple of days later, he came back and he said, I'm doing something else. Can you help me? And I said, absolutely. And then he told me, I have two VPs that they will definitely need your help. Can you help them? And I said, yeah, absolutely, I can help them. So then the company that I was working for realized what I was doing. And if you remember, we were in the middle of not only the financial thing too, consultants and they were being left, they were kicked out rather quickly. They said, you're a coach. That's who you are. So they started to advertise me as a coach, and I went to coach. I think it was like 19 different countries. Now, this particular company had a very interesting niche, and the niche is working with American companies in developing economies.
Okay.
So a lot of the travel that I did was, to the world, Sub-Sahara Africa. I went to Asia, a bunch of different places. It wasn't very exotic, but I learned a lot of, coaching. And when I came back in 2007, back to the States, and in 2013, unfortunately, my tumor came back. So I had to go through the whole process again, but this time, thank God, it wasn't as bad. Wow. But I did lose my job. So then I decided, I am going to do what I've been doing. I'm coaching, and this is what I've been doing since then on my own.
It's a crazy story. We've got like a movie script in the making here, but I'm sure I will get hate mail if I don't ask some practical things here. But like because I want to know too. So you've had so much real lived experience then, as first off, just as consultant coach, and now with your specific niche. Could you boil it down to, and if it's oversimplistic, just tell me that I'm being silly, but are there 2 or 3 sort of themes that you find when you show up in a room to be a coach that you just kind of expect we're probably going to work on these 2 or 3 things with most folks?
The themes that always show up is going back to my niche of being misunderstood. Is that sometimes your intention is not what people perceive. We're not good at measuring and valuing our own performance. We need others to tell us how good we are. Right. How well are we doing? So one of the things that I've seen is that we need to be relentless about asking for feedback and opportunities to suggestions to get better. And a lot of times that I've seen is people that don't ask for feedback or ignore the feedback. And these are the people that are misunderstood, not because they want to, because they don't know what they don't know. So that's one. The other thing, going back to what you said to me about, being vulnerable, I think that being vulnerable is not a sign of weakness, but actually it's the most courageous thing that you can do. And that closes the relationship gap really fast. So that's number 2. I think number 3 for me is this is part of my own experience, is that the world doesn't belong to the people that know the most, but to the people that learn the fastest. Okay. And I think that a lot of people, think that I have done this, I have done that, therefore I know what I know. And the reality is that, we live in a world that now is constantly changing. We're always playing catch up with everything. You buy an iPhone and you have to learn how to use it. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of times, people going to places thinking that they know everything about the place. And this is even more difficult with highly educated individuals, that they believe that because they're highly educated, they can solve your problem without having the context, or they think that you should understand the way they understand things. So feedback is one, making sure that, what is the last one that I think? My way is not the only way.
Yeah.
There is always, if you go to a doctor, 3 doctors, and you have a pain in your elbow, you will have 3 different opinions, and I think that the biggest problem that I've seen a lot of people is that they come with their opinions as positions, and positions are very difficult to defend, as opposed to coming in as their opinions and put them as an option.
Yeah.
And once you that, the options are more flexible, and options are allow you to, to build on them.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that helps.
Sure.
I don't know if that's.
It does. And if I had to pull a theme out of everything you just said, it feels like humility, like sort of having the willingness to be vulnerable, the willingness to ask someone honestly, how am I doing, and create a culture where they will be honest and not just say what you want to hear. I think a lot of us, maybe all of us, are sort of insecure, and that's true for the C-suite too. A lot of us, I think, we find ourselves in a position of influence, and suddenly it's even more scary, I guess, to be vulnerable and to tell folks what we don't know. But I totally agree with you. The best leaders I've ever met, you can overdo it, I'm sure, but the best leaders I've ever met have an ability to know their own weaknesses and to be comfortable in their own skin, and to receive feedback. Yeah.
I think that, yes. And to build on that, I believe that there is a difference between failing and losing faith.
Yeah.
The people that are afraid of losing faith are the individuals that that have trouble trying with failure. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So and that is something that I try to to separate. Failing doesn't mean that you're going to lose faith. And sometimes people say if I fail, then I'm losing faith, and that is what scares most people, is to lose faith, lose influence, lose you see what I'm saying? So all of those things.
I do. Yeah. Luis, thank you so much. I value your time. I'll let you go, but hopefully we can have you back in our LeaderCast community somehow, some way. I'm sure folks will really enjoy hearing your story.
Thank you.
People will want to reach out to you. So what's the best way for folks that may want to connect with you?
You can follow. You can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Or connect with me via my website. Is velascoaching.com.
Okay.
So www.velascoaching.com, or just LinkedIn. I hope that you can put my LinkedIn link on your podcast.
Yeah, we'll put it.
I would appreciate that.
We'll put it on the podcast. Thank you so much, Luis. Have a great day and enjoy your time away there for a few more weeks.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later.